CRMs like Hubspot are a crucial part to many businesses. And in the latest Kestra release, you can now automate HubSpot using Kestra. Let me show you how it works. The new HubSpot plugin in Kestra has support for a number of different operations, such as creating, deleting, getting, searching, and updating for companies, contacts, and deals. And you can also create tickets as well. Now, I'm going to walk you through a bunch of different examples to show you how this plugin works and how you can get it set up with Kestra. When I'm inside of HubSpot, to get set up, I need to go to settings, and then I need to go to integrations and then private apps here on the left. Now here you can create your own private app. I've done this one called Kestra, and the key thing to make sure it has is under scopes, it has the opportunity to read and write to companies, contacts, and deals. And it also has the ticket scope. Now, obviously, you can tweak these so that if you only want Kestra to be able to read your contacts but never create them, then only give it the read permission. But for this plugin to work, these are the ones you need to be able to have full access. Now, here's an example of what a create task might look like. This is specifically for companies. Now, for the API key that you get when you create an app, I've just gone and added this as a secret inside of Kestra so I can reference it here under API key. After that, we've got a bunch of different properties here called name, domain, company description. These ones are standard, but for additional properties that maybe you've added your own custom ones, you're going to need to use the property ID. And so if I just quickly go over to HubSpot, we can actually look at an example company that I have. We can click action and then click view all properties. And here we can see a bunch of different properties that we might want to use. And if I click onto details for these properties and if I want to see what the actual property ID is called, so for example, here we've got postal code. If I click details and then edit the property, it will then tell us here the internal name is just zip. So if I want to be able to add zip to the postal code to that company, I would have to just add in zip under here, and then I can add it in like so. So let's do that here. I'm just going to put in a couple of numbers here. I'm going to change the name of the company here to Demo with Will, and the website is going to be Kestra.io. So now if I press save on this and execute this, what we'll see is it's going to create that contact, or that company, and then we can go over to outputs and actually view all the information that we added. So we can see a bunch of different details here. We can scroll across and see all the details related to this company. Now, if I go back to HubSpot and then go to companies, we'll hopefully see our new demo with Will. It's got Kestra.io as the domain. I can see it's added postal code. So it is important to make sure that you get that ID correct for being able to add it to HubSpot. So if you add any other properties, just throw them underneath that additional properties field. And that same applies to deals as well as contacts. So now I'm going to have a look at the search task, but this time we're going to have a look at contacts. So pretty similar to what we were doing with companies, but here I've got 3 different contacts. Now, if I specify a property here under the properties option, what that will do is it will only return that property for each of the different contacts. So if I execute this now, what we'll see here is we'll get a nice preview here where it's just given us the email. We haven't got any other details other than some dates for when it was created and modified and the object ID, which is quite useful because then we can go use the get task to get more information about that. But it's only giving us emails. But if we want to get maybe names or job role, if I remove the properties option, or I could add those property IDs if I know them to get them as well. But if I just remove those for now and then go over to the URI, you'll see now we get more details. We get the first name, we get the last name, and we get the email address as well. So if you want to get more properties, you can remove it. But if there are specific ones you want, especially those additional properties, which it won't fetch, then you can just specify those under the properties field here, and you'll get all of that information. Now let's have a look at the get task. So if I go under my user and I view all the properties for Will Doe here, if I scroll all the way down, you will see inside of your HubSpot instance a record ID. Now if I copy this, I can now use this workflow here, which is going to take that record ID that we're calling contact ID here as an input, and then we can pass that to the task. So let's say you've got an example where you want to get information about a contact and then pass it over to something else. You can use Kestra to fetch that information automatically for you, and then you can use the output here, which will then contain information such as that email address. So now you can take that information and then pass it to a later task. Maybe you want to be able to invite someone, use that information to send an email or contact them in some other way, you can do that using Kestra. Just like contacts and companies, you can also work with deals using the plugin. So here I've got a deal called My Example. I'm just going to fetch the property ID or the record ID, which I can get here. And what I can do is actually delete it using this task. So again, similar to that get task, I'm using an input here to allow me to pass the ID through. And when I press execute here, we'll see that it's deleted it. It doesn't return any outputs, but if I do go back to deals, we'll see that there is only one now. So this is quite useful if you need to delete deals, maybe because they weren't real or you duplicates. You can also do that using the plugin. We've also got an update task, so if you want to update some fields inside of your contact, you can do that too. What I want to do is update the role inside of HubSpot using this HS role property, and I'm going to change it to project management. Now, this is the internal name for it. It is worth going and checking what those internal names are. You can't just fill this in with a string. So if you've got those pre-assigned, so if I can look for role, here is the employment role, and as you can see, I've got a bunch of different options here. Now I want to set this to project management. If I press on details and then edit again, we will be able to see some of this information. So we can see HS role is in fact the internal name. If I press execute now and pass in the contact ID for that user, you can see that it's updated it now. I can go to outputs to see that it has in fact updated it. And if I go back to that user and refresh, what we'll see is if I scroll down, we'll see that the employment role has now been updated to say project management. So really good way, again, if you've now maybe got a workflow that gets more information about a user, you want to be able to add it to their contacts or companies as you find out more information about them. This is a great way to automate that. Now, if you use HubSpot for managing tickets, you can now use Kestra to automate this further. So here's an example where if a workflow inside of Kestra fails, you can have it automatically create a ticket in HubSpot. Now, you could change this to be other things, such as maybe when other services have issues or fail, you can then have Kestra to recognize this and then create a ticket for you. So here I've asked it that if any workflow fails inside of the company.team namespace, I want it to create a ticket. And as you can see, I don't have any tickets at the moment, but I have got a workflow here that is going to fail on purpose using the fail task. So if I just execute that, what we'll see is that's going to fail. We can see under the executions tab that it has run that system flow. So we can see it was successful. If I go over to HubSpot, we'll now see that it's created a workflow to tell us that the workflow fail on purpose has failed on execution ID here. And we can then, see the date and time that it failed too. So you can use this to add more information about what's failed, where you maybe even a link to get you to Kestra so you can view it. So this is a really good way for being able to automate that process so that if you're using HubSpot heavily, you can see that information right in front of you rather than having to rely on going back into Kestra and checking yourself. So that's just a quick overview on the new HubSpot plugin inside of Kestra. Hopefully this will make automating your CRM much easier. I'd love to hear how you're using HubSpot in the comments below. Let us know if there's another kind of demo you'd love to see with HubSpot, maybe something a little bit more related to how you're using HubSpot. I'd love to hear from you all.